제가 싸움 매at 그이글라.
대결라 제바트만 요 라리 없이 마차.
나스 예사야사. 나고상이와 나 따와가다기 책이시 길미 가서 미쳐. 그렇음. 야, 아니 잡서나 망구댕아 체제스. 야, 따 망구댕아 체진. 망구댕아 체제 따와가다기 책이시 길미 가서 말타. 나무상 따마라 이메지.
Hoya. Chale. Kushukneri. Ka. Rankaneri. Ka. Rankaneri. Ka. Changzi. Changzi. Yeah. Ka.
So,
Otadare. Good morning. I think, come.
Samanta Cakkavalesu Atraha Gachantu Devata Sadhammang Muniraja Sunantu sagamo kadham dhamma savanakalo ayang badanta dhamma savanakalo ayang badanta parita dhamma savanakalo ayang badanta ti namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma Sambuddhassa namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa buddhaṃ saranam gacchami dhammam saranam gacchami sangham saranam gacchami dutiyampi buddhaṃ saranam gacchami dutiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami dutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami tatiyampi buddhaṃ saranam gacchami tatiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami tatiyampi sangham saranam gacchami iti piso bhagava arahaṃ samma sambuddho vijjacharana sampanno sugato lokavido anotaro purisadhamma sarati sattha deva manusanam buddho bhagavati swakato bhagavata dhammo santi วันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆยติตัญจัตตาริปุริสยุกะนิอาทาปุริสปุกะลาเยสัพพะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆอาหุนายโยปาหุนายโยดาคินายโยอัญจลิกรณิโยอนุตตรัมปุญญาเขตังโลกสาติบาหุมสหัสสมวินิมิตาสโยตันตังกิริเมฆลังโอติตะโกรัสเสนามาราดานาติตามวิตินาจิตวะโมนินโตตันเตจะสาภวตุเตจยามะกาลานิมาราติเรกมวิโยจิตาสะบาราติโกรัมปนาลาวกมาคมตาดายาคังขันติสุตันตวิดินาจิตาวะโมนินโตตันเตจะสาภวตุเตจยามังกาลานิน
Thank you. Windy. Thank you. Okay, picture, photo. Thank you.
हृदयसूत्रं प्रज्ञापारमिता हृदयसूत्रम् एवं मया सूत्रम् एकस्मिन् समये भगवान् राजगृहे विहरति स्म गृध्यकुटे पर्वते महता भिक्षु संघेन सार्धं महता च बोधिसत्त्वेन तेन खलु समयेन भगवान् गम्भीरावसम्बोधन् नाम समाधिं समापन्नः तेन च समयेन आर्यावलोकितेश्वरो बोधिसत्त्वो महासत्त्वो गम्भीरायां प्रज्ञापारमितायां चर्यां चर्माण एवं व्यवलोकयति स्म पञ्चस्कन्धास्तांश्च स्वभावशून्य व्यवलोकयति अथायुष्मानुशालिपुत्रो बुद्धानुभावेन आर्यावलोकितेश्वरं बोधिसत्त्वं तदवोचत यः कश्चित् कुलपुत्रो वा कुलदुहिता वा अस्यां गम्भीरायां प्रज्ञापारमितायां चर्यां चर्तुकामः कथं शिक्षितव्यम् एवमुक्ते आर्यावलोकितेश्वरो बोधिसत्त्वो महासत्त्वो आयुष्मतं सारिपुत्रमेतदवोचत यः कश्चित् सारिपुत्रः कुलपुत्रो वा कुलदुहिता वा अस्यां गम्भीरायां प्रज्ञापारमितायां चर्यां चर्तुकामः तेनैवं व्यवलोकयितव्यम् पञ्चस्कन्धास्तांश्च स्वभावशून्यं समनुपश्यति स्म रूपं शून्यता शून्यतैव रूपं रूपान् पृथक् शून्यता शून्यता न पृथक् रूपं यद् रूपं सा शून्यता या शून्यता तद् रूपम् एवं वेदना संज्ञा संस्कार विज्ञानानि च शून्यता एवं सारिपुत्र सर्वधर्माः शून्यता लक्षणा अनुत्पन्ना अनिरुद्धा अमला न विमला अनुना सम्पूर्णाः तस्मात् हि सारिपुत्र शून्यतायां न रूपं न वेदना न संज्ञा न संस्कार न विज्ञानं न चक्षुः न श्रोत्रं न ग्राहं न जिह्वा न कायो न मनो न रूपं न शब्दो न गन्धो न रसो न स्पर्शव्यं न धर्माः न चक्षुर्धातुर्यावन्न मनो धातुर्न मनोविज्ञान धातुः न विद्या न विज्ञा नाशयो यावन्न जरामरण न जरामरणक्षय न दुःख समुदय निरोध मार्ग न ज्ञानं न प्राप्ति न प्राप्तिः तस्मात् शारिपुत्रः अप्राप्तित्वेन बोधिसत्त्वानां प्रज्ञापारमितामाश्रित्य विहरति चित्तावरण नास्तित्वादर्थस्थो विपर्यासान्तिक्रान्तो निश्चलनिर्मण प्रज्ञा व्यवस्थिता सर्वबुद्धाः प्रज्ञापारमितामाश्रित्य अनुत्तरा सम्यक् सम्बोधिमभिसम्बुद्धाः तस्मात् जातव्यः प्रज्ञापारमिता महामन्त्रः अनुत्तरमन्त्रः समसममन्त्रः सर्वदुःखप्रशमनमन्त्रः सत्यमित्यत्वात् प्रज्ञापारमितायां मुक्तो मन्त्रः तद्यथा गते गते पारगते पारसङ्गते बोधि स्वाहा तद्यथा गते गते पारगते पारसङ्गते बोधि स्वाहा एवं शारिपुत्र गम्भीरायां प्रज्ञापारमितायां चर्यायां शिक्षितव्यं बोधिसत्त्वेन अथ खलु भगवान् तस्मात् समाधेरुत्थाय आर्यावलोकितेश्वरस्य बोधिसत्त्वस्य साधुकार्यमणा साधु कुलपुत्र एवमेतत् कुलपुत्र एवमेतत् गम्भीरायां प्रज्ञापारमितायां चर्यां चर्तव्यं यथा त्वया निर्दिष्टम् अनुमोद्यते तथागतैरब्धिः सम्यक् सम्बुद्धैः इदमवोचत् भगवान् आनन्दमनाम् आयुष्मान् सारिपुत्र आर्यावलोकितेश्वरस्य बोधिसत्त्वस्य सा च सर्वावती परिश्यस्य देवमानुषा सुरगन्धर्वश्च लोको भगवतो भासितम् अभ्यानन्दगिति प्रज्ञापारमिता हृदयसूत्रं समाप्तम् प्रज्ञापारमिता हृदयसूत्रं समाप्तम्
Thank you. Group picture.
Thank you so much.
Happy New Year. Okay. 이게 Thank you. Thank you. Vedi rundo. Merhom. Okay.
皆空，度一切苦厄舍利子，色不异空，空不异色，色即是空，空即是色，受想行识亦复如是，舍利子，是诸法空相，不生不灭，不垢不净，不增不减，是故空中无色，无受想行识，无眼耳鼻舌身意，无色声香味触法，无眼界，乃至无意识界，无明亦无明尽，乃至无老死亦无老死尽，无苦集灭道，无智亦无得，亦无所得故，菩提萨埵依般若波罗蜜多故，心无挂碍，无挂碍故，有恐怖，远离颠倒梦想，究竟涅槃，三世诸佛依般若波罗蜜多故，得阿耨多罗三藐三菩提，故知般若波罗蜜多是大神咒，是大明咒，是无上咒，是无等等咒，能除一切苦，真实不虚，故说般若波罗蜜多咒。其说咒曰：揭谛揭谛，波罗揭谛，波罗僧揭谛，菩提萨婆诃。愿消三藏诸烦恼，愿得智慧真明了，不愿罪障，悉消除，无事事常行
Thank you. 谢谢。줄 거리야 말해. 대화를. 你好，你好。对对。好呀，谢谢。
I pay homage to the Gautama who, moved by his compassion, taught us the sacred Dharma to rid us of all distorted views. I pay homage to the mother of all the Buddhas, the perfection of wisdom, which is inexpressible, ineffable, beyond conception, and the object domain of self-aware Salutation from Abhisamaya Lankara by Maitreya, which pays homage to the mother of Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and the Buddhas. Which are respectively called the knowledge of the path, the basis or the foundation knowledge of the path and the omniscient. So, without further ado, we have already the recitation of the Pali Sutra. After his enlightenment, perfect enlightenment, the Buddha, before long, in Saranath, the great sacred site of Saranath, he turns the first wheel of Dharma on the Four Noble Truths and others which form the foundation of the teaching of the Buddha. And so this is followed in Sri Lanka, Thailand, Burma, Cambodia, Laos, and also China, Tibet, Korea. All of these, the followers of the Buddha in these different places follow the same Vinaya, the practice of Vinaya is shared. The Pratimoksha Sutra, the Self-Individual Liberation Sutra, may be slightly different because of different orders, such as the Vinaya tradition, the monastic discipline tradition that the Tibetans follow is Mula Sarvastivada tradition, which was passed down through Master Nagarjuna and others. And then in the Pali tradition, they follow the Theravada tradition. In these Pali countries, they follow the Theravada tradition. In the Mulasarvastivada tradition, we have through 253 precepts or vows that the fully ordained monks follow. There may be slight difference in the minor vows. And so Buddhism from India spread to the Sanskrit tradition, spread from India to China, from there to Vietnam, Korea, and It spread to Vietnam, Korea, and Japan. And so, with regard to the Sanskrit tradition, the Buddha gave the teaching at the Vulture Peak Mountain for those who are of very sharp faculty. So those with sharp faculty who follow on the basis of reason were given this teaching on the perfection of wisdom. So we had the Chinese Dhamma brothers and sisters reciting the Heart Sutra in Sanskrit. And so many of the countries like China in Asia are followers of the Sanskrit tradition. So we can say that almost the whole of Asia, the Buddha Dharma has spread the whole of Asia. So, but today, even in the Western countries, particularly educated people and scientists, with regard to the Sanskrit tradition, particularly focusing on the system of emotions, psychology, and logic. So without having to talk about liberation or past and future lives, but on the basis of logical reason to prove past and the authenticity or to verify the truth of the teaching. Whereas in the theistic religious traditions in the West, there is this belief and faith in the God as a creator, whereas in India there are those spiritual or the philosophical systems which didn't have any belief in a creator God. And so the Nalanda tradition, the Indian tradition, and particularly the Nalanda tradition, which follow logical approach, logical reasoning, and also which consists of teachings pertaining to quantum, their concept similar to quantum physics, is found in this Nalanda tradition. And so even after over 2,550 years after the Buddha passed away, today even these scientists, educated people are paying attention and have keen interest in learning from psychology and Buddhism, the Nalanda tradition. And so in many of the countries around the world today, there are people who take interest in the tradition of Buddhism. So we as Buddhists are practitioners of Buddhism traditionally. So it's very important for us as traditional Buddhists to generate or have faith in, gain faith in the teaching of the Buddha through understanding the teaching. In the Haribhadra's commentary called the Sfutarth, the clear meaning commentary, he mentions the two types of followers of the teaching of the Buddha. One who follows on the basis of reason. They are called the sharp faculty ones, the intelligent followers, and the not so intelligent ones who follow on the basis of faith. And so the former investigate into the nature of the causes which bring about, which are called the mothers, which bring about the results of the Shravaka, Prajaka Buddha, Bodhisattvas, and Buddha, Arya beings. And so by understanding the nature, the true nature of these, the path, they understand whether these the path of the Buddha and so forth are worth paying our faith or not. And so by using reasoning and logic, as it is taught in the Panchaparamita Sutras, that everything is without any essential identity in and of themselves. So understanding such nature, and so when the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, the shortcomings of samsara and the advantages of attaining nirvana. So how through this one could understand that if there is a possibility to overcome the afflictive emotions and so forth and attain nirvana, however strong and intense our negative emotions, the destructive emotions may be, they don't have any the sound basis and support from valid knowledge. And therefore, we all should understand the two truths, as quantum physics also says. There is an appearance level of understanding things and the deeper truth or reality. And so without satisfying, feeling content with the appearance. And therefore the Buddha, after his enlightenment, right after his enlightenment, he said, I have found this nectar-like dharma, which is profound, peaceful, without elaboration, unconditioned and luminous or clear light. And so the profundity and peacefulness refers to the teaching, is a reference I take to be a reference to the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, the Four Noble Truths. And then the free of elaboration, I take it to refer to the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, which teaches emptiness in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, which is called the object clear light as well, emptiness, which is in the absence of independent existence. And then unconditioned luminosity refers to, I take it to refer to that of the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, where the clear light mind is taught. The clear light mind is taught in the aspect of the third turning of the wheel of Dharma called Tathagata Garbha Sutra and others. And this is also called the essence of Tathagata, the Buddha nature that we all have. And so this also is called the subjective clear light mind. And regarding the thorough, the complete explanation of this mind, the luminous subjective clear light, it is taught in the highest Yoga Tantra. There is the classification of mind into the gross and subtle level of minds. And so the subtlest, innermost subtle mind is that clear light mind, which goes from here until enlightenment. And therefore the Buddha said, I have found this peaceful, profound, peaceful dharma, the nectar-like dharma, which is profound, peaceful, with free of elaborations, luminous and unconditioned. And the Buddha also has said that the sages do not wash away the sins of the non-virtuous or unwholesome actions of beings, nor do they pick out or remove the suffering of sentient beings with their hands, nor do they transfer their own realization to others. And so how do the Buddhas help after having gone through the path for over countless eons? and having gone through the purification of negativities, defilements, and also the accumulation of merit, how do the Buddhas help? So he said, the Buddha said, the Buddhas cannot wash away the sins or the unwholesome actions of sentient beings. And nor the Buddhas can remove the suffering of sentient beings with their hands. Neither do the Buddhas transfer their own realization to others. We cannot, even if we plead to the Buddha to gift us with his realization, there is no way he could do that for us. But by teaching the reality of how things are, the Buddhas or the sages lead beings to liberation. So by seeing the Buddha's body, so we have a tendency, the way we relate ourselves to the Buddha, we have a tendency to, as if seek some kind of a blessing from the Buddhas to overcome our defilements, negativities, and so forth. That's not the way the Buddhas can help us. Whereas every sentient being, from the small insects like ants, and down to the small insects like ants, do not want suffering but want happiness. So the other sentient beings, the birds and so forth, do not have the same kind of language and the brain like us as human beings. Though we are all same in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering, all sentient beings, infinite number of sentient beings, most of them more or less find joy, happiness, or blissful, pleasant experiences on the basis of sensorial experience. On this earth, sentient beings have evolved since some tens of millions of years. So hundreds of millions of years have gone by since sentient beings evolved on this earth. But there is none who has the same kind of brain like human beings. So we as human beings have this special brain. So all the religious traditions, of course, talk about seeking refuge in their different gods. The theistic religions mainly focus on praying to God for our happiness and so forth, whereas the all teachings, of course, all religious traditions teach that of love and compassion. So even the theistic religious traditions also have that message for us. Whereas in India, the non-theistic Sankhya school, Jainism, and Buddhism, these three do not assert a creator God as such. So the Buddha himself has said that you are your own master. Who else will be your master? So therefore, it is up to you whether you to overcome suffering or not is up to you. So the Buddhism teaches, gives a whole lot of teachings about transforming our mind. There are a lot of teachings on transforming and training our mind. So to achieve happiness and overcome suffering is mainly should be done on the basis of the mind. So the animals, of course, can try to avoid physical pain when they face danger to their body and so forth. Whereas as human beings, we are able to think about what we are going to do in the future and plan things. So we have this, we can make long-term plans and so forth. So why suffering happens is because of unruly mind, undisciplined mind that we have. In the prayer that the Chinese said, may the three poisons be eliminated. So this is a very powerful prayer. The first line says, may the three poisons be eliminated. How the means to overcome that, to eliminate that is by wisdom. And the prayer says, may the light of wisdom be ablaze or shine forth. So by developing this light of wisdom within ourselves, so by thinking about the varieties of phenomena, we develop that of compassion, bodhicitta, and by developing wisdom, understanding how things are, we develop the wisdom to see reality and truth. And so this wisdom of realizing emptiness is something which even those who aspire to their own liberation for themselves alone are develop. Whereas when this is combined with bodhicitta, the wisdom of emptiness combined with bodhicitta, then you attain that of Buddhahood. And so you to attain that, you follow the Bodhisattva path. And therefore, in the prayer, it says, may all obstacles may we get rid of all obstacles, and may we engage in the Bodhisattva practices. So there are many people who come to from the Western countries, who take interest in Buddhism. So because they use their intelligence, their intellect, therefore they begin to find interest in the teaching of the Buddha. The Buddha himself has prophesied that his teaching will spread from India to its north, which refers to Tibet, and from there to the north, which refers to Mongolia. So I will begin to see that we also could say that the Buddhism can spread from Tibet to its south, and then from there to other countries. So to its south means India. So it has come back to India, and then from here it spreads to other parts of the world. And so the essence of the teaching is to overcome our undisciplined mind. Because of our attachment and anger and hatred, we cause ourselves lots of problems. And so these negative emotions, of course, cannot be overcome through drugs, by taking drugs. It may help, the drugs may help to make the unhappy mind a little bit subsided, but it cannot uproot this. And so in India, there has been the tradition of non-violence, ahimsa, and compassion. So non-violence or harming others comes through hatred or anger, and therefore there is need for compassion, which counters this unruly mind anger. So in India, we usually call the tirthikas, the forders, or non-Buddhist traditions, in other words. Even in their tradition, there has been the practice of single-pointed mind, calm abiding, and then vipassana, in special insight meditation. It has been there in India for over 3,000 years. So as I mentioned about the Sankhya school, the non-theistic Sankhya school says that we should actually make change within ourselves by changing our mind, transforming our mind. And so this is also said by the Jains and Buddhists. So how do we transform our mind? Our mind, which is afflicted by or under the influence of our destructive emotions, we should know which type of mind disturbs our peace of mind as soon as they arise in us, and what are their countermeasures, counter forces. And so we should strengthen those countermeasures, counterforce to the negative emotions, and then eliminate the destructive emotions in that way. And so this is how we go about with training the mind in the Indian tradition. So the Buddha has said that as long as we remain undisciplined in our mind remains undisciplined, there will be suffering and disturbance of the peace of mind. And when you go deeper into the destructive emotions, with regard to destructive emotions, what causes all these destructive emotions is this perception or the conception where we perceive or conceive things to have some kind of independent, solid existence. And so even quantum physics talks about this, the disparity between appearance and the reality. So when we hold on to some kind of a solidity and in the appearance, the appearance in the sense that the things appear as if they have some kind of independent existence. When we hold on to that kind of appearance, then the other destructive emotions arise in us. So because of this conception of holding on to the appearance of how things appear to us. And so the Master Nagarjuna says, through the elimination of karma and afflictions, there is liberation. Karma and afflictions arise through mental constructs. So inappropriate mentation. And that in turn arises because of our holding on to some kind of a true existence in things and beings. That's how the things and beings appear to us, and we cling on to that. And because of that, the misapprehension or the exaggerated outlook arise in us. And so Master Nagarjuna also says, our attachment, anger, and confusion arises through this exaggerated outlook, and that in turn arises through the clinging to the appearance of things having some kind of an independent existence. And therefore, to counter this deep ignorance within ourselves, this misconception of reality, the Buddha taught emptiness, as we find in the Heart Sutra also. Form is empty, which doesn't mean that form does not exist at all, but it goes on to say emptiness is form. And so form exists, but not the way they appear, it appears to us as if it has some kind of independent existence. So anything that you pick does not stand alone as self-contained existence. And so whatever there is, form and so forth, of course do exist. But when you try to find its identity within that whole, there is nothing that you can pinpoint as being that form or any other external objects. We can talk about the 3 times, but when you go deeper into it, there's nothing that we can pinpoint or point our finger at as being the present as well. And so things which are changing moment by moment, we cannot find something that we can say this is the present moment when we try to analyze that. And similarly, it is the case with the mind. We can talk about the mind in terms of its temporal moment, temporal extension, but you cannot actually pinpoint something as being the mind when you try to go into each moment and its moment, within one moment, its parts and so forth. And therefore, when we realize that the negative emotions arise because of our exaggerated outlook, which is in turn rooted in this misconception of reality, the total misconception of reality, then when you understand that things do not exist the way they appear to us, it helps to reduce this clinging. And so form is empty, emptiness is form. And these two, emptiness and the form and its emptiness, are of the same essence, but distinct conceptually. So form does not exist in itself or by itself independently, but it is made up of different causes and conditions and its parts. And so form is empty, and apart from being absent of any intrinsic existence, form cannot have its existence. Therefore, emptiness is form. And in Buddha Palita, there is this statement where Buddha Palita says, if things were to have any essence in and of themselves, then what is the need for dependent designation? So, dependent arising and existing by its own essence are contradictory. And therefore, the Heart Sutra says, emptiness is no other than form, and form too is no other than emptiness. And therefore, based on the wisdom, relying on the wisdom realizing emptiness of inherent existence, the Buddhas of the past, present, future become fully enlightened. So the past Buddhas have become enlightened. through meditation on this emptiness of inherent existence, and the future Buddhas will also become enlightened relying on it, and the present Buddhas also have relied on it and become enlightened. So how do we go about with this practice? And so that the path that leads to that kind of full enlightenment of Buddhahood, it is mentioned, or the Heart Sutra mantra, Tat Yatha Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhiswaha, is a reference to these five-tiered path, which says go beyond, go perfectly beyond, and lay the foundation in Bodhi. So, when you understand that things have no inherent existence, and also that the very nature of the mind itself is luminous and clear light, and you can see that the defilements are not in the intrinsic nature of the mind, and therefore Buddhahood is, and enlightenment is possible. And so you go, in order to reach that enlightenment, full enlightenment of Buddhahood, you go through the five-tiered path, beginning with the path of accumulation, where within the context of the Bodhisattva path, you first cultivate and develop genuine bodhicitta, and then go on into the path of preparation, where you develop the vipassana, the union of vipassana and the shamatha, calm abiding, and focused on emptiness, and then your mind becomes more and more purified of the negativities, and then you reach the path of seeing, where you see the emptiness directly, and still when you strive further, persevere further on the path, you reach the path of meditation, and then finally that of the path, the Bodhi, the enlightenment of Buddhahood. And so if you, so what it shows is through this path we are able to pacify or eliminate the negative emotions more and more, and you become more and more calmer. And so even when you look at animals, when the animals are quiet and calm and peaceful, those around that animal, and other animals like around that one animal also become peaceful. Whereas if one of them is disturbed and cause trouble, then the rest of the community is also troubled. And in human society, we also create lots of problems. Although we want happiness and do not want suffering, but we are not able to see what those cause and conditions, those factors, we are not able to see which factors bring about the peace of mind and counter the attachment, anger, and so forth. And therefore, when your mind is undisciplined, then there is suffering. And so there are two means by which one can discipline one's mind. One is bodhicitta, and which helps to reduce selfish motivation, selfish attitude. And when you have this bodhicitta within yourself, as Bodhisattva Charya Avatara says, today in the presence of the Sugatas, the protectors, I call on all sentient beings to the feast of Sugatahood, which is the full enlightenment, and in the meantime to pleasant experiences. And therefore, gods and demigods and others rejoice or be joyful. And then the Panchaparamita Sutras, or the 84,000 teachings of the Buddha, on the one hand teach selflessness, and therefore the other means of disciplining our mind is the wisdom of developing this wisdom of selflessness or emptiness. And so these two principles, bodhicitta and the wisdom of selflessness or emptiness, are the two factors which can discipline and control our mind. And so when you have bodhicitta within yourself, you actually are dedicated for the well-being of others, and you don't remain selfish, and therefore there is this strength within yourself, inner strength and courage to work for others, and therefore you can feel proud of it as well and confident. Whereas if you remain selfish, then you will not really have true happiness for yourself, leave alone happiness for others. And therefore, Master Shantideva says, if you do not switch your joy and happiness with the suffering of others, not to mention about the Buddhahood, even in samsara you will not have happiness. So this is quite true if we relate it to our own experience. As I said earlier, all these problems that we face today, from the leaders, the politicians, and others, common people, because of this selfish attitude that they have deep within them, in their hearts, and therefore we have all these problems. Of course, democratic system is very good, but when people remain very selfish, there is no real peace and happiness in the world. So this is something that we can see with our own eyes, that many of these problems that we face, instead of using our intelligence for constructive purposes, such as reducing suffering and increasing our happiness, we engage or indulge in abusing our power, and we abuse others, we bully others, and therefore there is all kinds of problems. Therefore, material, external development alone is not sufficient. But if we wish to have peace in the world, first we need to develop genuine peace within ourselves through the practice of love and compassion. So scientists are also saying these days that compassion, the very nature of human beings is compassion. So as social animals, they say, we are reliant on or dependent on our community, the society that we live in. And so we, as social animals, social beings, we as human beings, we are reliant on others in our society, community. And therefore, the scientists say that the basic human nature is compassionate. And the scientists also say that if you remain selfish and full of anxiety, fear, and so forth, then these actually deplete or weaken our immune system as well. So these are what scientists say. If we are more compassionate, more peaceful in our mind, then we have better health as well. And so we do not need to resort to some religious dogma, but these are what scientists say. And these are something, some kind of empirical experience as well. So for the last many years, I have had discussions with many scientists, and many of these scientists are taking special interest in the subject that are taught in the Indian tradition, psychology, emotions, and so forth. And also with regard to quantum physics. So with regard to Chinese tradition of Buddhism, the Xuanzang, who's called Tangsan Lama in Tibetan, studied in Nalanda. So there is also a story that Tangsan Lama, Xuanzang, had also met with Matangiva, who was one of the students of Master Nagarjuna as well. So when I was once on a pilgrimage, I was shown in South India, I was shown a cave which was said to be the cave where the Master Nagarjuna lived, and there is a river flowing nearby. So I had a special dream. So they showed me the route which the Xuanzang was said to have taken in South India. So I recited the praise to the Buddha for teaching Tibetan origination and reflected. And then when we were leaving, I saw a white conch left on a rock. So I took that to be a good omen. So there was nobody who... It was just lying on the rock. Without anybody possessing it, or it didn't belong to anybody, so I took it and put it into my pocket, and it is in my room in Dharamsala. So it is very clear that Xuanzang came to India to study Buddhism in Nalanda. So as you, the Chinese Dharma friends, pray, may the wisdom light shine forth. So in order for that to happen, you should go through this process of learning, study, reflection, and meditation to cultivate and generate this wisdom or understanding based on study, reflection, and meditation. So in Tibet, when the Samye monastery was constructed, there were Chinese meditators who lived in the department of unwavering concentration. So there was some tradition amongst the Chinese practitioners that just through the practice of thoughtless meditation, one could reach Buddhahood. And therefore, in the Chinese tradition, there is not much emphasis on doing extensive study of the Buddha Dharma. But because of these Chinese meditators asserting such a thing, in Samye monastery, Master Kamaleshila was invited, and they had discussions with the Chinese masters, had discussions with monks, had discussions with Kamaleshila, and through their debate, the Chinese were turned dumbfounded, and therefore the Tibetan king and the Tibetans asked the Chinese monks to leave Tibet. And so they left Tibet with a mixed feeling of perhaps joy and sadness, sorrow. So the Tibetan tradition of Buddhism was established with the help of Master Chandarakshita and his disciple Kamalashil. And so for over 1,000 years, we have emphasized studying in depth the teaching of the Buddha through memorization of the root texts. For example, in the case of the study of Panchaparamita, we memorize Abhisamaya Alankara, which is ornament for clear realization, and then, which is the root text, and then we rely on commentaries such as the clear meaning commentary by Haribhadra, and then the Tibetan masters also have written other commentaries to these two texts. And so you listen to the commentary, word-for-word commentary from the teachers, and then further discuss the meaning of these books through debate by using logic. As you saw earlier, the monks debating that was shown on the screen. And the Tibetans have also paid special attention to the study of logic. Master Sakya Pandita has written his treasury of logic or epistemology, and Chapa Chögyal Sengye also in the 11th, 12th century wrote, emphasized on the study of logic and reason. And so the fact that we have been able to keep up with our tradition of Buddhism until now is because of using logic and study of logic. In the past, Sakya tradition was said to have great tradition of learning logic and debate and so forth. But later on, the Gelug monasteries, of course there are the ritual monasteries, many of them are there, but the three great seats of learning, Sera Drepung Ganden, and other monastic institutions of learning in the central part of Tibet, western and the eastern part of Tibet, Kham and also Amda regions, there has been this great tradition of learning the Indian classic texts extensively. If you look at, for example, look at the writings of Master Tsongkhapa, you'll find how great he was. He compares the different Indian commentaries and contrasts them. And so he actually compares many different commentaries written by Indian masters and wrote his commentaries. But he never uses any harsh language or language where he boasts about his understanding, insight, and so forth. He was very gentle, but as opposed to Kedrubje. And Master Tsongkhapa emphasized the study of logic, and in his Destiny Fulfilled, Rinpoche says, in this snowland, northern land of the snows, there are many who say that the teachings of the seven treatises of logic by Dhammakirti and also texts on logic by Dignaga have no explanation of the path system which leads one to liberation. But yet they also believe and that Dignaga was actually prophesied or urged by Manjushri to write the Pramana Samuchaya, the compendium of logic, that it will become like an eye of the world in the future. And they do believe that to be true. So Tsongkhapa says he found these two positions contradictory. So Tsongkhapa writes in the Destiny Fulfilled that when he actually pursued the study of Dignaga's texts and Dharmakirti's texts, especially the Dharmakirti's text of Pramanavartika, he found in the second chapter that this second chapter is an explication on the salutation verse of Pramana Samuchaya by Dignaga. And in this second chapter, he actually proves the reliability or of the Buddha himself on the basis of explaining the teachings of the Four Noble Truths in the sequential order and also the reversal of the order. And so Rinpoche emphasizes on studying the teaching thoroughly. And so on the basis of these understanding the general teaching of the Buddha, the general characteristics of teaching of the Buddha, thoroughly, well, then one should enter into the specialized teachings, which is the Tantra. And so, through study, one goes into develops the understanding based on learning, and then through reflection, one develops the understanding based on reflection, and then through meditation, one develops this understanding based on experience, meditative experience. And so one should go about with the Dharma through this kind of triple process of study, reflection, and meditation. So even today, I do study different texts. So in the beginning, you may gain some understanding through by reading books or listening to teachings. But when you use that understanding in reflection and go over and over on those points of the text, one would have the understanding developed through reflection, and then that through that conviction that you develop through reflection, through reasoning and so forth, then one should do meditation. So as you familiarize yourself with the teaching through study, reflection, and developing the understanding based on them, then you would be able to become convinced in the teaching, and then you can actually do meditation on the teaching of the Buddha. So in this way, one should make transformation within oneself. So the text was written by Gyalsey, Thokme Sangpo. Gyalsey here means a son of the victorious one. So here, this is a title that he was given because he was known at that time as a Bodhisattva. So this is a term for Bodhisattvas. And he lived in the Ngulchu Hermitage. And so, therefore, in the in the colophon, it says, this was written for his own and others' benefit by the monk Thokme, an exponent of scripture and reason, in the cave of Ngulchu Rinchen, the precious Ngulchu cave. So when I give you explanation of the Buddha Dharma, you would gain some understanding of what the Buddha Dharma is about, and therefore you may have developed some kind of inspiration and gained inspiration in the teaching of the Buddha. So I do not need to emphasize on bearing the correct motivation as such. So when I meet with elderly people, I usually tell them that we are not thinking only of one life, this life alone, but we think of past and future lives, because life after life. So since we have created this guru and disciple relationship in this life, I could say that we could probably repeat this in the future as well, future lifetimes as well. And so as we usually pray, may I never be separated from the perfect guru for a life after life, throughout my lifetimes, and tread the path and grounds, thereby attaining the state of Vajradhara in the end. And therefore, in order to reach that goal, it's very important for us to understand that we need to pursue study, reflection, and meditation of the Dharma. So because these 37 practices of Bodhisattvas teach bodhicitta, and compassion and love and kindness, it pays homage, the author pays homage to Avalokiteshvara. And then verse number 1 is like the salutation verse of Mula Madhyamaka Karika, where the Master Nagarjuna pays homage to the perfect teacher, the Buddha, for teaching that are dependent origination and free from the 8 extremes. So I pay constant to my supreme teacher and protector Chenrezig, who, while seeing all phenomena lacking, coming and going, makes single-minded effort for the good of living beings. So when you understand that things have no independent existence, you'll be able to see how one can reduce this clinging, this strong clinging at some kind of independent existence in things, by understanding that things lack any coming and going inherently. So though there is coming and going, but when you try to search for what is coming and what is going in and of themselves, then you wouldn't be able to pinpoint at anything being coming or going. Yet, coming and going do exist by way of conventional renown, as Master Chandrakirti says in Madhyamaka Avatara. If you try to search for the identity of things through the sevenfold reasoning and analysis, there's nothing that you can find as being this and that. Yet, things do exist by way of worldly convention. So, nothing can be found when searched for within themselves, but they still exist by way of worldly convention. So I pay constant homage through my 3 doors to my supreme teacher and protector Chenrezig. perfect Buddha, source of all well-being and happiness, arise from accomplishing the excellent teachings. And this depends on knowing the practices. So I'll explain the practices of Bodhisattvas. So the perfect Buddhas means someone, means that having overcome all the shortcomings and defects and faults. So the faults within ourselves arise because of there being ignorance at the root for such. And therefore, through the practice of combination, the combined practice of bodhicitta and this wisdom realizing emptiness, we can tread the path, along the path, and become a perfect Buddha, whereby one would be able to overcome all defilements, all shortcomings, and be adorned with all the perfect qualities. So, all the followers, most of the followers of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition know that we have the 300 volumes of Ganjur and Tenjur, 100 volumes of Ganjur, the translated words of the Buddha, and the more than 200 volumes of the exegetical treatises written by Indian masters. So these are not just to be left in the altar, but we should use them as our textbooks to study. And so in the Tenjur, for example, we have the 5 treatises of Maitreya and also the 6 collections of reasoning written by Master Nagarjuna and so forth. So through these treatises, we should try to understand the Ganjur words of the Buddhas. So verse numbered 1, having gained this rare ship of freedom and fortune, hear, think, and meditate unwaveringly day and night in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cycling existence. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. And then the next verse, number 2, because when we live in our homeland, I mean, we have all the near and dear ones, and therefore there could be obstacle to our study of the Dharma. In Tibet, central part of Tibet, very few people become qualified geishis, whereas most of the geishis used to be from people from Kham, Amdo, and also Mongolia. So people who have come from distant lands. There were very few who were from the Uzang. But in the recent past, Master Lhundrup Tsuntu and so forth became geishis from the central part of Tibet. So attached to your loved ones, you are stirred up like water, hating your enemies, you burn like fire. In the darkness of confusion, you forget what to adopt and discard. Give up your homeland. This is practice of Bodhisattvas. By avoiding bad objects, disturbing emotions gradually decrease, and so forth. And then, next, number 4, loved ones who have long kept company will part. So even this body, which we rely on so much and taken care of so much, will leave us at the end. So you will not be able to even carry this with you. And next shows that giving up bad friends, which means non-virtuous friends or sinful friends, will not, as Gongdan Tempe Dome says, sinful friends will appear to us having horns, but we should recognize that those who serve as who become obstacle to your study, reflection, and meditation of the Dharma, they are your non-virtuous friends. When you rely on them, your faults come to an end. And your good qualities grow like waxing moon, cherishing the spiritual teacher, even more than your own body. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So someone, a teacher, a master who is learned, simple, humble, and kind, is someone who is called a spiritual teacher. And Rinpoche, in his when he teaches on the teacher-disciple relationship, he mentions the qualifications of a teacher and what kind of students should rely on a teacher and how they should relate, how the teacher should teach the disciple. So Rinpoche says that someone who wishes to tame others must first have tamed themselves. And the way to tame oneself is through the practice of the taught in the three collections of the teachings of the Buddha, which amounts to those of the three trainings, the morality, concentration, wisdom. And then the qualification of the teachers is also mentioned as tenfold in the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara. And so Rinpoche's writings are quite comprehensive. When you look at his writings, you'll see as if he was writing from a full knowledge of the whole system of the teaching of the Buddha. Whereas the path of bliss and the swift path, these two Lamrim texts seems not to take into account the full picture of the teaching, the system of the teaching of the Buddha. And so Rinpoche follows the Kadam scriptural tradition or scholastic tradition. So, of course, if you have a Lama who is able to guide you constantly, and so that you can avoid being led astray, I mean, you may be able to work well on the path and practices. Otherwise, it's just relying on some texts which are called pith instructions or practical instructions may not be that have that kind of an impact. So bound himself in the jail of cycling existence, what worldly God can give you protection? Therefore, when you seek refuge, take refuge in the three jewels which will not betray you. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So we do have the practice of propitiating the so-called landlord spirits. So you all know that there was this practice whereby which people called the practice of some kind of a Dharma protector of the tradition of Master Tsongkhapa, whereas this is not the case. The fifth Dalai Lama described the nature of this malevolent spirit as someone who is born from wrong prayers, and whose nature is evil, and then who harms the Dharma and sentient beings. And so there were lamas who called him as the Dharma protector of Master Tsongkhapa's tradition. That's not right. So verse number 7 shows that a practice of taking refuge. And the next one also is practice pertaining to the beings of small scope to overcome suffering. So with regard to suffering, there is the suffering of suffering. suffering of change, and or changeable suffering, and then the pervasive conditioning, existential suffering. So for the beginners level practitioners, we should of course reflect on the suffering of suffering, and thereby we aspire to overcome them and wish for higher rebirth in the next life. So even at the cost of your life, never do wrong or non-virtuous actions. And so this amounts to the practice of abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions. So except for the wrong view, the rest of the 10 non-virtuous or unwholesome actions are same or shared with other religious traditions as well. So this is a shared practice except for the wrong view. And then, pertaining to the beings of intermediate scope, verse number 9, like dew on the tip of a grass, pleasures of their world, 3 worlds, last only a while and then vanish. So even a higher rebirth in the next life, it would be a result of our karmas and delusions. So we are still bound to undergo the changeable suffering and the pervasive conditioned existential suffering. So all the name, fame, and gains in such a life always ends in suffering. There's misfortune happening even in such a form of life. So what ordinary people usually consider to be blissful, pleasurable, pleasant, which are dependent on our food, clothing, shelter, and so forth, name and fame, people with wealth and so forth also remain always worried. So even one's wealth is a source of suffering for us. So these the pleasant experiences that are drawn on the basis of our body, wealth, fame, and so forth are also changeable suffering. So this kind of body and mind that we have, which are under the power or influence of destructive emotions and karma, as long as we have this kind of aggregates, mind and body, there is going to be they are going to be the suffering, source of suffering. Even when you go into from this desire realm and go beyond it to that of the form realm, and from there again to the formless realm, in the peak of cyclic existence, where you have the subtlest kind of samsaric mind, you are still not free from suffering as such. And therefore, like a dewdrop at the tip of a grass, pleasure of the 3 worlds last only a while and then vanish, and aspire to never-changing supreme state of liberation. And so for that, one first avoids, through the Pratimoksha vows, one avoids those of the physical and verbal non-virtuous actions. So when you think that you are a monk, a bhikshu, constantly you remind yourself of that. Even in dream, you would be able to reflect that when you are about to do something bad, you'll be able to remind yourself that you are a bhikshu, a monk. And so through this kind of mindfulness of one's own precepts, vows, and introspection, constantly one is able to actually create the condition for single-pointed concentration. And therefore, when we enter into the concentration practice or developing concentration, so when you are when you are even in developing concentration, you may still be overcome with laxity and mental excitement. So when you are able to remain on the object with full alertness, and the intensity of your mind focusing on the object is, quite strong, alert, and without the laxity, mental laxity and excitement, you'll be able to develop that strong single-pointed concentration. And so by following the 9 steps of developing calm abiding, when you are able to maintain your single-pointedness of mind without the 2 main obstacles, mental excitement and mental laxity, harming you at all, or you develop that concentration, the calm abiding. And then once you have developed that single-pointed concentration, then you use that concentration to develop the special insight. And so with that insight, one uses the insight to overcome the ignorance, which is the root of samsara, this cycle of existence. So the Buddha himself was said to have commissioned the wheel of life, which depicts how we enter the cyclic existence, beginning with ignorance, all the way to with the 12 links of dependent origination. And the Buddha was said to have actually told to make that drawing for the King Udayana or somebody. And so, in the 12 links of dependent origination, it begins with ignorance, which is depicted by a blind woman. And so, with the help of this ignorance, one creates the formative karma, and that leaves imprint on one's consciousness, the 3rd link, and then you go through the rest of them, and then it ends in the 12th link, which is aging and death. And so, in order to reverse that, one eliminates or overcome ignorance, this misconception of reality. And so once ignorance is stopped, then the rest of the links also stop. As I quoted Master Nagarjuna earlier, by eliminating karma and delusions, there is liberation. And so, in order to see the possibility of liberation, one should understand what is meant by true cessation. So, in order to understand that well, that it is possible to attain the true cessation, one needs to understand that the ignorance is something which is a misconception, a distorted view about reality. And so one should meditate on how things do not have any independent existence as it is taught in the scriptures, and how the destructive emotions disturb our peace of mind. We should see their nature and how they arise and what they do, these negative emotions. And so when you think about like that, as long as you don't overcome the afflictive emotions, there is no way you can attain liberation. And therefore, when you see that there's a possibility really to attain true cessation, you will have the aspiration to reach that goal. Now, the verse number 10 down refers to the practice of the beings of greater scope, be it the superior faculty. When your mothers who have loved you since time without beginning are suffering, what use is your own happiness? So there is no greater factor than bodhicitta to fulfill one's own interest fully, and also there is no greater factor than bodhicitta to help fulfill the interest of others as well. As we usually say this, with these lines, I take refuge in the three jewels, I confess all misdeeds, I rejoice in the good deeds of all beings, and I take to heart the enlightenment of Buddhahood, and then I seek refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, supreme community, until I am enlightened, and for the sake of one, to fulfill one's own and others' interests, I shall generate bodhicitta, and so forth. And so I do generate and cultivate bodhicitta on a daily basis as soon as I get up. And then also meditation on emptiness. And then I also do all many different deity yoga practices. And then verse, which is number 11, on page 23, if you have this text, is where it says all suffering comes from the wish for your own happiness. So this one verse shows exchanging self and others. So when you hold others dear to yourself, everything in the world appears positive to you. So with bodhicitta, it is said that you will complete the accumulation of merit, and all the obstacles also will be overcome through it. You will have good health, long life, and many friends through this. In other words, the whole universe appears as something positive, dear to you. So all suffering, perfect Buddhas are born from the thought to help others. Therefore, exchange your own happiness for the suffering of others. This is Bodhisattva practice. Even if someone out of strong desire steals all your wealth and has it stolen, dedicate to him your body, possessions, and your virtue, past, present, and future. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Lama Gyalsey Rinpoche told me a story. Gyalsey Thokme Sangpo, the author of this text, was going from one place to another, and on the way he met with some bandits who robbed him of everything that he had, the offerings that he received from people. And then they left him and were going in certain direction. And Thokme Sangpo actually told them, don't go this way, because people who made these offerings to me are living in that direction, and so go the other direction. For ordinary people like us, we would have, of course in those days nobody had telephones, but if we were in that situation, we would feel rather glad, thinking that, oh, good, these people will meet the people who made these offerings to me, and they will be snatched. These offerings will be snatched away from them. Even if someone tries to cut off your head when you haven't done the slightest thing wrong, out of compassion, take all his misdeeds upon yourself. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. even if someone broadcasts all kinds of unpleasant remarks about you throughout the 3,000 worlds, etc., so as Bodhisattva Charya Avatara, the guide to Bodhisattva Vyaya says, your enemy is your best teacher of patience. So our love or compassion towards near and dear ones is more or less mixed with attachment, whereas the so-called adversary or enemies are the ones who give you the opportunity to practice patience when they cause harm to yourself. You can think that this person also wants happiness and do not want suffering like myself. So, and therefore, when you have compassion towards such a person, it's not mixed with attachment at all. And therefore, our enemies are considered as the best teacher in Bodhisattva Charya Avatara by Shandideva. In return, with the loving mind, speak of their good qualities. This is practice of Bodhisattvas. Verse number 15. So, being respectful to someone who derides or speaks bad words about you in public gathering, look on him as a spiritual teacher. You should not become angry, but bow to him with respect. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Even if a person for whom you have cared like your own child regards you as an enemy, cherish him specially like a mother does her child who is stricken by sickness. And so when you have love and kindness to such a person, I mean, that's a true loving kindness or affection. Verse number 17 and 18. So verse number 18 shows that even when you are deprived of food and livelihood, so for a practitioner of Dharma, this also to be too poor, stricken with poverty, is one obstacle for practicing Dharma. And next verse, which says, though you become famous and many bow to you, etc., and these are may cause you to have arrogance. And so that's another obstacle to the practitioner of Dharma. While the enemy of your own anger is unsubdued, though you conquer external foes, they will only increase. Therefore, with the militia of love and compassion, subdue your own mind. And verse number 22 shows that of the meditation on emptiness. Whatever appears in your own mind, your mind is your own mind. Your mind from the start was free from fabricated. So whatever appears is your own mind. So this could either be interpreted from the Chittamatra point of view or the Savatantrika Yogacara Savatantrika Madhyamaka point of view as well. Your mind from the start was free from fabricated extremes. Chonang Taranatha has a very beautiful verse. So there is this beautiful, the clear appearance of the illusion-like things, and that the mind is something that is unreliable. There's nothing that you can actually show, and everything, whatever, is inexpressible emptiness. So when you look at this crowd, we can say here is a big crowd of people, a whole assembly. When I look at you, I see your body, and when you look at me, you see my body, and you also hear my voice. And through this hearing the voice, you may be able to, in a way, kind of infer, oh, His Holiness is thinking this in this way. So this body, this mind, and the mind, the voice and the mind that you see, hear, and you infer, you'll see these are the body, mind, and speech and mind of the Dalai Lama. And the one that possesses these three, the body, speech, and mind, is me. But where is that me? Where is the I? As Nagarjuna says, the Tathagata is neither one with the aggregates nor separate from it. He is neither in in the aggregates, nor are the aggregates in him. He does not possess the aggregates. What is the Tathagata? So this can be applied to oneself, switching the Tathagata to yourself. I am neither the one with the aggregates nor separate from it, and so forth. And so you meditate on emptiness. When I do the Tantric Deity Yoga practice, for example, when I meditate or visualize the 15 directional deities, the protector deities, I actually switch the Tathagata with the 15 deities, these 15 protector deities. And so, through that, meditate on emptiness. And so, this verse can be applied, the verse from Mula Madhyamaka Karika, chapter 22, can be applied to oneself, others, the deities, Buddhas, and so forth. So your mind from the start is free from fabricated extremes. So the external objects do not have any independent existence, and also the mind, which is made up of its temporal sequences, the sequence of moments, cannot also be pinpointed when you try to search for its identity. So when you say that everything in the universe and everything in the samsara and nirvana are the expression of this clear light mind, the self-reflection or expression of the self-clear light mind, it may give some kind of an conception that there is this clear light mind which stands alone. But when you actually put that, even that, under the lens of your analytical mind, then you cannot find even the luminous clear light mind as well. And then verse number 20. So understanding this, do not take to mind inherent signs of subject and object. So these lines can also be interpreted from the Chittamatra point of view, as well as Madhyamaka, Yogacara Madhyamaka, and Savattanaka Madhyamaka point of view. So when you encounter attractive objects, though they seem beautiful, like a rainbow in summer, don't regard them as real and give up attachment. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So when you, the next verse says, when you see them as illusory, so this helps to dismantle this kind of a strong clinging to some kind of a solidity in things. verse number 26 shows teaches about ethical discipline. 27, verse number 25 teaches generosity. 26, discipline. 27, patience. So His Holiness is commenting on verse number 27, saying the Bodhisattvas who want a wealth of virtue, those who harm are like precious treasure. This is true. And then verse number 28 shows enthusiastic effort. And 29, understanding that disturbing emotions are destroyed by special insight with calm abiding. Cultivate concentration which surpass the four formless absorptions. So with the formless absorptions alone, you will not be able to overcome the root of samsara. And so going beyond the formless absorption, this practice of bodhisattvas. So the perfections, all the perfections like generosity, perfection of ethics and so forth, get the name perfection because of the wisdom, perfection of wisdom. So since the five perfections without wisdom cannot bring perfect enlightenment, along with skillful means cultivate the wisdom which does not conceive the three spheres as real. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. If you don't examine your own errors, you may look like a practitioner but not act as one. Therefore, always examine your own errors. Rid yourself of them. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Habitual, verse number 35. So this shows how one should actually, crush disturbing emotions as soon as they arise in oneself. So through the practice of mindfulness and introspection, one should be able to recognize these and try to crush them right there and then. And so in brief, whatever you are doing, ask yourself, what's the state of my mind? With constant mindfulness and mental alertness, accomplish others' good. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. To remove the suffering of limitless beings, understanding the purity of three spheres, dedicate the virtue from making such efforts to enlightenment. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Though not poetically pleasing to scholars, owing to my poor intelligence and lack of this shows his humility, the author's humility. So however, as the great deeds of bodhisattvas are hard to fathom for one of my poor intelligence, I beg the excellent to forgive all faults, such as contradictions and non sequiturs, through the virtue from this last verse is a dedication verse. I have also seen his Thokme Sangpo's commentary on Mahayana Uttara Tantra or Mahayana Sutra Alamkara. And so we are done with the 37 practices of bodhisattvas, and tomorrow we'll do the empowerment of great compassionate deity. So this text, the 37 practices of bodhisattvas, is short for daily practice. It's a good text as a preliminary to the tomorrow's initiation. I have given teaching on these 37 practices of bodhisattvas. Oh. Then tomorrow I'll also do the Bodhisattva, Bodhicitta ceremony as well.